Hello friends, we are here in the last chapter of Galatians. This is Galatians chapter 6. So we have to look at what we've been going through for the rest of the book in order to understand this chapter. So the idea that's going on is that there's these Judaizers, these people who are coming around. They came after Paul and they said, we think that you guys need to be circumcised in order to become Christians, because Christianity came out of Judaism. And so he's telling all these Gentiles they need to be circumcised in order to become Christians. And Paul is telling them this is completely wrong. This is called living in the flesh, because your salvation is coming from you and your ability to follow the law. And he's saying no longer. We are something new. We'll get to this at the end of the chapter. We're a new creation. We are neither Jew, neither are we Gentile. We are this new thing that is completely saved by grace. It's you've probably heard that a trillion times if you're watching this video, that you've been saved by grace, but it really is a completely radical idea. So in the beginning of the chapter, he had just said in the previous chapter, he went through the fruit of the Spirit. And he's saying if you are close to the Holy Spirit, if you are following God, if you are keeping a good relationship with God, that means you're walking in the Spirit. And when you're walking in the Spirit, you develop all of these good traits. And it comes like your spirit is built up from doing this, and that is why you do good things, because you have a good relationship with the God from whom all good things come. So it's not so much a question of following this law or following that law. Christianity is very much a question of just connecting with God and doing His will. In this chapter, he says, if anybody falls into sin, we should bear each other's burdens. Now, this is important because in Judaism, they were very judgmental. And I suppose Christians can be judgmental too. But they were judgmental in a harmful way. They would find a woman caught in adultery and they would want to stone her to death. She's not following the law. She doesn't deserve to live. But Jesus says, let the one who without sin cast the first stone. So, when we, rather than being judgmental, we as being Christians, we need to go to that person if we are spiritual. Now, I think it's interesting to point out that when he says if you're spiritual, he's saying not what we think. If I hear someone say that they're spiritual these days, that makes me think that they're not a Christian, but they believe in a lot of weird stuff. But when he says it, he's talking about someone who walks in the Spirit, someone who is close to the Holy Spirit, who comes from the true and real and only Spirit that is good. So he's saying if you are spiritual, a true, strong Christian, then you should bear each other's burdens, meaning you should see the sin that they're going through and you should try and help them out of it. You should be around them so that they can have a better relationship with God with you. If you go in to help someone out of sin, make sure you're not being just like the Pharisees. Make sure you're not looking at the other person and being like, oh, I am better than you, and I'm helping you with this problem. And that makes me better because I'm helping you. What Paul is saying here is that's dangerous. If someone thinks that they're something when they're not, this is a big problem. That is a sin in itself because you're doing that thing again. You're relying on the flesh and this idea of comparing yourself to other people. And it's not about that. It's about you and your relationship to God. He's saying when you go and you help other people in their sins, make sure that you are not also getting into the sin, getting into a sin. If you're bearing someone else's sin, that can in itself lead to the sin of thinking that you're better than other people because you're not struggling with the sin that they're struggling with. So in the second section of this chapter, he's talking about the two different teachings. And he says right in the beginning, the one who is taught, let them go back and tell their teacher about all the good things that are happening. So he's talking about if you're essentially teaching the gospel. If you're teaching the gospel, have the people that are teaching, that are being taught, come back and say what the fruits of the gospel is having in their lives and in the lives of the people around them. And to the people who are teaching the law and saying you need to keep the law and you need to, follow the law. He's saying those people can't follow the law anyways. They're sowing in the flesh, and he's saying what you're going to see is that when you sow in the flesh, that is, that you teach that you need to follow the law and that you need to do good, why don't you see what that happens in the lives of the people who are being taught? And if you are teaching the gospel, why don't you see the benefit of what that teaching is happening in the lives of the people that are hearing it? And what he's saying is the people who are being taught the gospel are going to have life transforming experiences, and like he mentioned earlier, the Holy Spirit came into them after they received the gospel, but not after they received the law. And he's saying there's no difference between the law that they're trying to give you and essentially the natural law that happens everywhere all the time. He mentions that in the other chapter where he's saying, essentially everybody has this idea of, right and wrong and getting what you deserve. And he's saying, let's see how far that goes. The law of unforgiveness, what effect will that have? And so he calls that sowing corruption. So he's saying make sure, just look at the effect of what is being taught and you'll know which way is the right way. And he says something interesting, and I mentioned it at the beginning. He says, because we are a new creation. He even says, I'm writing this with my own hand. Now this is important because he's saying with big letters, because he's got bad eyesight. Usually he was dictating to someone else and telling them what to write. But here he's saying, I'm writing this with my own hand as if to say, this is the most important thing here. You are neither Jew nor Gentile. You are a new creation. And that is maybe the most important thing he's saying in this book. He's saying you are a new creation, not Gentile, not Jew. You're this new thing. You're a new community. He's talking about Christians, but he's also talking about individuals themselves. They are something new. Anyways, that is the book of Galatians. Join me tomorrow. We will start the book of Ephesians. Have a great day. Bye.